Chapter 67. Needy Nikki had a secret she couldn't tell. She knew Jennifer and the band were lying. In the news, from the mouths of reporters and from the mouths of the band's fans, Low Shoulder had bravely rescued many people from the fire and become heroes of this town. But Needy would always remember. That night, she and Jennifer were in Music Alley together, watching the fire burn behind them, huddled together in fear. Then the band members came and took Jennifer away. They didn't stay or save anyone. No one knew where they took Jennifer, not even Needy. Later, when Jennifer returned, Needy had a terrible discovery and speculation. This friend she grew up with seemed to be more and more eccentric, more and more ostentatious, more and more unpredictable. Like now. "Honey, I know you won't reject me," Jennifer giggled, her red lips close to Needy's cheek. "We've always been like this since we were little, right? We're as close as sisters, you'd be willing to do anything for me. But that doesn't include helping you send a love letter." Needy frowned and pushed Jennifer's body that was pressed against her. "Moreover, you suddenly told me that you like a girl. And the girl who hit you until your head bled yesterday, this is unbelievable. She didn't even apologize to you." "That's right," Jennifer giggled and winked at Needy, "but it was just a misunderstanding. I think I made her unhappy, so I asked you to ask her out for me. I just wanted to clear up the misunderstanding. I don't care about yesterday, Needy, you don't need to be angry on my behalf. She's really beautiful, and very charming." Jennifer muttered, her eyes darting around, looking a little confused for a moment. Needy looked at Jennifer coldly. She suddenly realized that Jennifer's complexion was very bad last night, her lips were chapped and her skin was pale. Today, she suddenly looked full of life, her lips full and fresh, no sign of yesterday's fatigue. For some reason, she suddenly shivered. "I don't understand." Needy lowered her head, trying to hide her fleeting panic, "But if you really want to get to know her, you should contact her yourself." The atmosphere suddenly became stifling. After a while, Jennifer smiled calmly. "All right, my poor baby, stop acting so cowardly, it's like I'm bullying you." She absent-mindedly lifted Needy's chin. "That reminds me, how's your relationship with your boyfriend lately?" Needy was startled and muttered, "Not bad." "That's good," Jennifer stroked her cheek, "the relationship between you two is really good." "Oh, I think your boyfriend is quite cute lately. Even though he's a freak." The sexy and beautiful girl laughed heartily and was about to leave. Needy's pupils contracted, she grabbed Jennifer's hand and said in an almost pleading tone, "Jennifer, you really don't remember what happened that night?" "I told you I don't remember." Jennifer impatiently shook Needy's hand away and left the bathroom without hesitation. Needy stared blankly at her back, then suddenly moved her lips and said in a voice that was almost inaudible, "But, I still remember." "What do you remember?" A cold and clear voice sounded from the side. Needy's teeth trembled slightly. She said unconsciously, "That night, Jennifer came to my house. She shivered and suddenly realized something, turned around, saw the blonde girl coming out of a bathroom stall, standing in front of the sink. Through the mirror, she looked at Needy with cold eyes. Needy angrily said, "Is it interesting to eavesdrop on other people's conversations?" She recognized Siddle, the girl from the dance yesterday, and turned to leave, but Siddle grabbed her wrist and pulled her back. The blonde girl used one hand to smoothly close the bathroom door, pressing Needy against the wall, her cold blue eyes looking at her. "Why did you run?" Siddle's cold gaze made Needy calm down. She remembered the ferocious look of this girl when she beat someone yesterday and couldn't help but shiver. Siddle gently asked, "What are you afraid of?" Needy immediately loudly denied, "I'm not afraid of anything." The girl's blue eyes seemed to see through Needy's thoughts. She took Needy's hand and brought her to the mirror. "See? There's no one else here, you can confide in me about your feelings. I won't tell anyone." Her voice was gentle and soft. "Or, you can look at this mirror, there's a girl with long wavy hair and glasses. She's been with you day and night for more than 10 years, she's the closest person to you. You can complain to yourself, right?" Needy stared blankly at herself in the mirror. Long, flowing hair, freckled face, chubby face and figure, outdated glasses, and a carefully chosen outfit that still looked very rustic. She suddenly felt a little uncomfortable. She knew she was just an ordinary, rustic high school girl, but she had never been jealous of her friend, because Jennifer was her best friend. Needy had always thought so. Even though Jennifer treated her casually, often showed her hatred, and abandoned her because of her relationships with men. Needy had always thought that Jennifer was the most important person. She had even broken her promise to her boyfriend many times because of Jennifer. But, just because she refused Jennifer's request once, she was in return for her indifference and impatience. The voice beside her ear was as gentle as floating clouds. You must know a lot of things, right? Actually, you already understand everything in your heart. Even though you and she grew up together, and have been friends for more than 10 years, does she really care about you? Needy was worried and wanted to answer, but the girl beside her covered her mouth. Dash. Siddle said softly, no need to rush, think carefully. Think about what she will do to your boyfriend. That's right, what exactly happened that night? Needy was silent this time. She was silent for a long time, then slowly said, I don't know what happened to Jennifer outside. But I was probably the first person to see her. After she left with the band, she didn't spend the night with them, and she came to my house to find me. The room was dark, no lights on. She was covered in blood. She was crawling next to the fridge, eating the food in the fridge. What did she eat? A piece of meat. What meat? Raw meat. Siddle gently caressed Needy's lips and let her go. Remember to protect your boyfriend, little girl. She smiled ambiguously. There was another case of wild animals eating people this morning, right? When Needy returned to her seat in a daze, she didn't know what time it was anymore. She opened her book but was in no mood to study. Her mind was filled with the scene of her just vomiting in the toilet, but nothing came out. Needy flipped a page in her textbook and suddenly remembered that she hadn't read today's town newspaper. She took out the newspaper, seeing the exaggerated headlines on the page. At 4 o'clock this morning, a cleaner discovered the body of a man 50 meters away from the main road in the woods by the side of XX Road. After the police investigated and confirmed, they identified the man as Henry Bowers. The victims of these sudden deaths were all male, and all were teenagers. The victims' chests were all cut open, and their flesh and blood and internal organs were eaten. Needy. She snapped out of her thoughts and looked at the person calling her boyfriend Chip, in confusion. Chip froze, then seemed to come to his senses, and couldn't help but laugh. Have you been worried about this recently? Needy, you really think too much. He scratched his head. How can I be with your friend? Besides, we won't break up, don't think too much. Needy quickly said, I'm telling the truth. Even if she asks you out, you won't be able to meet her. Chip was silent for a moment. Needy, do you know something? Needy, what are you talking about? Chip sighed, and whispered, okay, I admit that I've been getting attention from your friend Jennifer recently, but you also know that I've never liked her, even though she's very popular with boys. He shrugged, but you're enough for me. Needy's teeth trembled slightly. Why didn't you say so earlier? Chip, you've always trusted Jennifer. If I told you, you probably wouldn't believe me. Did you find something wrong with her? I told you she's not suitable to be your friend. He muttered, but Needy suddenly started to tremble slightly. She remembered that since the fire, all the men who died were related to Jennifer, shuddering at the thought of the pictures of rotting internal organs and the animals gathered around. Needy felt someone looking at her. She turned her head, saw the sexy, radiant girl standing outside the window, her plump lips curled up, smiling at her, and also smiling at the boy behind her. Needy's mind was buzzing, completely blank. In her utter confusion, she suddenly remembered the blonde girl's last words before she left. It seems like there have been a lot of kids missing recently. Losing another one wouldn't be suspicious. Another missing child wouldn't be suspicious. it was the last day of school before summer vacation. Today was the day of the Derry Town Carnival, but Belch had no intention of attending. The main reason was because he had to be home before 8 o'clock. After school, he picked up his bag and left the school, bumping into a group of juniors at the school gate. They were a group of familiar people. Belch looked at this group of 12 or 13-year-old teenagers, originally not planning to approach them, but as he passed by, he suddenly heard the content of their conversation. His ears heard the word, clown. Thinking of last night's experience, he immediately entered a state of alertness, pretending not to care and standing aside to eavesdrop. My brother's disappearance definitely wasn't an accident, Bill said. I'll find him, and I've made some new discoveries these past few days. Me too, said another boy. I saw the zombie I was most afraid of. My investigation is not wrong. The chubby boy gasped. Every 27 years, children go missing in Derry, but the cause has never been investigated. I saw the clown in the library too. Belch was eavesdropping intently when he suddenly heard his own name. Is that Belch? Someone whispered. It seems like he's eavesdropping on our conversation. We should go further. Is Siddle Belch's older sister? Oh my God, I really sympathize with her, having such a younger brother. A group of teenagers whispered and slowly walked away. Belch. He felt unhappy in his heart, but he had indeed bullied the boys in the useless group before. Although he was very curious at the moment, he couldn't chase after them without thinking. But he thought about it again and again, still chasing after, holding onto Bill's shoulder. After receiving the wary gazes of these teenagers, he let go, saying, You guys better not go out on your own. I've seen that clown before. It's probably not very safe. He doesn't look like an ordinary person. Belch thought about the scene he saw in the basement last night, still feeling scared. After the monster disappeared, it left behind a piece of red balloon. It wasn't hard for Belch to think that the appearance of the monster was related to the clown. But Siddle was still calm as usual, as if she didn't know anything. Belch couldn't ask. But now hearing that these kids were going to explore the abandoned old house, Belch thought he still had to stop them. He felt that these kids were looking for a dead end. A teenager widened his eyes, wanting to say something but was stopped by Bill. The dark-haired teenager looked at him with a gloomy expression. Did you see the clown too? Yes, Belch hesitated for a moment, then nodded. Moreover, he then transformed into my sister's appearance, in my basement. The teenagers looked at each other strangely, and as they walked, they argued over what to say. What I saw was a rotting zombie charging towards me. I saw the fire, it killed my parents. What we saw was what we feared the most, someone said. They all looked at Belch. You said you saw your sister. Belch. It turned out that what he feared the most was Siddle. They had already walked to the main road, because most of the people had come to attend the carnival, so the road was very deserted, and there weren't many pedestrians. Bill stopped in front of a dilapidated house and said to Belch, Thank you for reminding me, but we still have to go find him. Belch didn't understand. Why don't you guys go find him with the adults? Although he thought that there was no need to look for that clown. Bill shrugged. No adult would believe this. Seeing that he couldn't convince the children, Belch could only pick up his backpack and say, Then I'll go first. Do whatever you want. If you get into trouble, don't blame me. He turned around to go home, but the only girl in Beverly's group suddenly called him back. Belch, the girl shouted, the clown has his eyes on you. It's useless to avoid him. He will continue to appear beside you, continue to follow you, and become your nightmare. Why don't you come with us to deal with him? The wind blew with the faint scent of blood. A strand of the brown-haired girl's hair was blown to her mouth. She stood on the moss-covered white stone steps. The old wooden door behind her creaked. Weeds grew everywhere. The courtyard was deserted. Darkness covered everything, making the atmosphere around this house that had been abandoned for many years even more gloomy. Belch swallowed his saliva, grabbed his school bag, unconsciously took a step back, and shook his head. I'm not going. He was not like these children. When he went back to tell his sister, Siddle would definitely not deny the existence of this clown. Even if he wanted to catch the clown, he would have to wait for the adults in his family to come before they could continue the discussion. Belch chose to ignore the fact that Siddle was not yet fully grown, unconsciously labeling her as an adult. "I have to go home," he said, intending to leave when he suddenly heard a scream from behind. Belch turned his head, horrified to see that the rotten wooden door was blown open out from inside by something covered in blood. Its limbs were twisted to the point of no longer resembling a human, raising its deformed face and rushing towards the teenagers standing in front of the door. Screams rang out one after another, his legs trembled slightly, remembering the horrifying scene in the basement last night. But after being stunned for only a few seconds, Belch reacted in time, rushed forward and threw his school bag at the monster, pulled Beverly up, and shouted, "Run!" Until they ran and crawled for about a kilometer before losing the thing. A group of teenagers panted, sat down to rest. Some thanked Belch, but now Belch no longer had the strength to feel moved.